to the Chairman of the Planning Committee, Councillor Richard Dallin.
Thank you and good afternoon and welcome to the February meeting of South Northamptonshire Council Planning Committee. And we go as customary to our first item, which is apologies for absence and appointment of substitutes. And Leslie Farrell from Democratic Services, can you tell us what you have?
We have apologies from Councillor Rebecca Breeze. She hasn't provided a substitute, and I see that Councillor Samiotis actually isn't in the meeting at the moment, but she may just be running late, Councillor. Chairman,
okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, Chairman, I think Councillor Samiotis also sends her apologies. Unfortunately, she is unwell at the moment, suffering with coronavirus.
Oh, well, we wish her well, and thank you very much, Councillor Johns. Those apologies will be recorded. Item 2 to declarations of interest. Councillor Hollowell, you have your hand up. Do you want to just say your bit?
Yeah, it's my usual declaration in any matters responding to archaeology.
I'm obliged. Thank you very much. We go to item 3, the minutes, the meeting we had in January, hoping that you've had a chance to, well, you will have read them, will you not? And can you confirm that they are a correct record by raising your hand? Thank you very much. And I will sign those in due course. I have managed to sign up until Christmas, so I've got the meeting from last month to sign, but I will do so. That has been agreed. Right, Chairman's announcements, item 4. Well, the usual business. Here we are once again in virtual form. And although the news was slightly more optimistic, I thought, at lunchtime, but nevertheless, we will continue in this format for the time being, certainly this meeting and the next one. Which means to say that if you could make sure that you have your microphone switched off, unless you're being invited to speak by me as chairman, and that your phones are muted. Now, item 5, our proposed site committee visits. We don't do any at the moment because of the COVID situation. So as and when and if and probably not, they resume. That's that one. So we go on to the first item this afternoon, which is item 6, our planning application, which is land off Mill Lane, Greens, Norton, and the planning officer, Samuel Dix, will talk us through. Samuel.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This application is an outline for up to 76 dwellings with only access to be determined at this stage. I'll just share my screen.
Could we just let the speakers back in before we
yes,
carry on, so they can hear the application?
Yes, you may let them in, as long as they're not in vision.
Can I also just say screen sharing appears to be disabled at the moment?
Yes, we can't see it at the moment. You're correct. Some problems.
Still getting the error message, I'm afraid.
Whether Paul Seckington, you can assist in this regard.
I think it's Richard's the host at the moment, so
right,
I don't know if he'll be able to.
Screen sharing's on. You should be able to.
Yep, I can now.
Try it again.
Okay. Right.
Got that.
Give it a go.
Fantastic. Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The site is just under 4 hectares in size and located on the southeastern edge of Greens Norton. This is the site plan in your committee report. I'll refer back to that in a second. I'll just show you the aerial photo. So this is the main part of Greens Norton village here. The site is this roughly L-shaped parcel you can see on the southeastern edge. So it's effectively on the Toaster side of the village. This is Toaster to the southeast here, and the A43 that you can see there. Returning to the site plan, as I say, it's roughly L-shaped in size. On this map, you can see the settlement confines, which run along the northern edge of the site and also the southwest corner. Immediately to the north is Freeman's Way, which I'll refer to elsewhere in the presentation and in the report. That's a development of 49 dwellings granted permission just over 10 years ago, and obviously built out since that time. That's been put within the settlement confines for the purposes of the Part 2 local plan. In terms of other constraints, there's a right-of-way that runs directly through the middle of the site that you can see by the way of this dashed line, and that will be retained in the proposals, as you'll see. There's no planning history for the site itself, other than 2 rounds of pre-application discussions, which are detailed in the report. Just going to run through a few photos here to contextualize the site and its surroundings. These are mostly to assist with the section of the report concerning landscape and visual matters. The first few are taken within the site itself and the rest from the surrounding area, various vantage points. So this is taken roughly in the middle of the site towards the north at the point the right-of-way enters from Freeman's Way. So that's looking eastwards towards the rearmost aspect of the site. I'll run through these quickly because the site is largely featureless. It's flat, it's an arable field without any feature of note other than its hedgerows. This is the right-of-way running directly through. This just shows you the paddock area to the rear of the nursery near the site, which is outside the developable area. So this is just showing you how the site will effectively wrap around that field with this remaining outside of the development. And these are just a few taken from within the site, looking around the surrounding area. That's looking back towards Towcester. And that's looking back towards the village as it currently is. So the remaining photos are taken from further afield. So this is stood in the rugby club car park, if you can picture that, towards the east of the site, around a kilometre or so away. And throughout these photos, I'll be referring to you to Freeman's Way, which is the relatively harsh edge to the settlement that you can see there. That is also referred to in the report. So these are just a selection of vantage points showing you how the village currently looks in this location. The site will sit, the development would sit slightly to the left of shot here, immediately adjoining those properties. This is just taken from the right-of-way that runs in the adjoining field, just to show you a different vantage point to a road. And this is just to show you the wider landscape character, looking back towards Towcester there in the distance with this isolated farmstead in the middle. These remaining photos are taken from Mill Lane, so on the other approach into Greens Norton, directly to the south of the site, around, again, a kilometre away. And that just shows you how Freeman's Way currently ends fairly abruptly to the east of Greens Norton currently. This panoramic was just to show you how the site occupies a relatively elevated position here, and also to show you the intervening distance between Towcester and the A43 to the right of shot there. And then again, these are just taken from a right-of-way to give you a different perspective. This is the Grafton Way running directly towards the site, which would sit directly in front of those houses again. And then the final two are just taken from much further away on Mill Lane, closer to the Abthorpe Road junction. And that just shows you how there is a degree of vegetation, even in winter months, screening the site in that direction. Can't really be seen. In terms of the plans themselves and the development, there are two alternative master plans that have been submitted that I'll flick through intermittently and show you the various characteristics. They are subtly different, but they each retain the main fundamental characteristics, which are a main spine road running from west to east from Mill Lane through the site, from which there are various cul-de-sacs and crescents along which the dwellings are arranged. Around the southern and eastern edges of the site, you can see extensive amounts of landscaping and planting, which also include areas of open space, play facilities, and 2 drainage attenuation basins at either end of the site. The differences between the plans are principally the result of specialist landscape advice that's detailed in the report. They include the setting back of the development along the southern and eastern edges to a greater extent, as well as the opening up of various different gaps, most notably in this area around the right-of-way, which you can see there was a relatively enclosed area, was subsequently opened up into a wider, more landscaped area in this second alternative master plan. As explained in the report, it's considered that further refinement of this second master plan would effectively be a plot by plot exercise, moving individual dwellings around, and that's considered by officers to be largely disproportionate, given this is an outline application with layout being reserved. Turning to the access, the development proposes a new access onto Mill Lane, as I said. It's built to an adoptable standard, acceptable to highways. Just thought I'd show you the access plan there, just to confirm what that would look like. It does also include a footpath built within the extent of the existing highway to connect into the footways in the village to the north. Other improvements include the widening of Mill Lane in this particular location, traffic calming within the village, and also improved cycle and scooter storage at the village hall. The final matter to bring to the committee's attention is that outlined in section 9.64 of the report concerning agricultural land quality. The plan on screen now that you can see is what that section of the report is referring to, whereby this central section of the site is the only parcel within the site that is not best and most versatile in terms of soil grading. These areas at either end are grade 2 soil quality. The dark green area is subgrade 3A, which is also best and most versatile, and only that middle section is 3B, which is not best and most versatile. As per the report, officers do not consider this a reason for refusal in its own right, due to the relatively small area of the site and the manner in which that middle section bisects the site. The only update that is in the written updates to make you aware of is the addition of a standard further recommendation regarding section 106 in the event of an appeal seeking delegated authority to the head of planning to negotiate that. The substantive recommendation remains as per the report for the reason specified refusal. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any members wish to ask a question of the officer at this point? Councillor Hollowell.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, just a couple of questions. I mean, the first one is, and this is a very well written report, but I've got a problem with the maps that are being shown us, and it was the same at the last meeting from other officers. You're showing a public right of way across the site, but not telling us what sort of a public right of way it is. We ought to know that, because it gives us an idea of the type of use that it would get. And the other thing is, I don't know if I missed something, but I thought the application area on the map was shown with a red line, and then other land not part of the application but owned by the same people was a blue line. I mean, what is going on? Because at the moment I've seen blue and red on this one within the last few minutes.
Samuel, thanks.
Okay. I can certainly answer the first question. It's a footpath that runs through the site, and it's part of the Grafton Way, as I said. Happy to clarify that. I don't know the reference number for it, but it's a footpath rather than a bridleway or byway. In terms of the red line boundary, you're absolutely correct that ownership would normally be in blue. The mapping team create the reports. If that's an issue going forward, we'll ask them to ensure that it's always a red line, because yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. That is normally the situation. Okay,
thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to ask a question at this point? No? All right, well, we'll move on, if we may, then to the public speakers, and we have 2 for this particular application. And first of all, we're going to hear from Jane Docking on behalf of Greens Norton Parish Council. So Jane Docking, if you could open up your video, thank you very much, and also unmute your microphone. Now, we stick to the usual rules that were it to be face-to-face, so you have 3 minutes in which to make your remarks, and then if you stay put, in case anybody wants to ask you a question. So if you're ready, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Chairman for permission to speak. I'm pleased to note that the planning officers are recommending the refusal of this application. Greens Norton Parish Council agrees with this response and the material considerations in the report. There are a couple of critical areas we would like to highlight on behalf of the parish. The visual impact. We note that the officer confirms that the previous Freeman's Way development has left behind a visually harsh edge to the village, and that he feels the proposed development could create a more sympathetic edge. This is not our view. We agree that the Freeman's Way development is a real issue, but we have no confidence that an improvement can be created where the new development would come further down the hill. We believe that the outcomes for the visual impact on the village would be more significant than the current harsh, and would view this as a major detriment. The traffic impact. The report suggests that 95% of the increased traffic would be directed out of the village. We have 3 comments on this. Number 1, this seems unlikely as the site is far enough from the school to suggest that driving to the school would be significant, much more than 5%. Number 2, even if this were true, it means that additional traffic is directed towards the dangerous narrow bridge over the old railway. This dangerous road structures is not noted or even considered in the report. Note, this bridge is unsuitable for significant construction traffic. And finally, number 3, if the 95% number is correct, what would be the point of additional traffic calming in the village? We know this is highlighted in the application and it seems totally at odds with the idea that there will be no impact on traffic in the village. So in summary, Greens Norton Parish Council support the officer in his recommendation of refusal as the site is outside the village confines, confers no benefit on the village, adding visual harms and traffic impacts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any member wish to ask Jane Docking a question? I don't think there is anybody. So thank you very much indeed, Jane, for joining us this afternoon. If you'd like to leave us visually and audio wise as well, then
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. If you could, yeah, thank you. And if I now go to our second speaker, who is Robert Love, who is the agent for the applicant. Good afternoon, Mr. Love.
Good afternoon.
As with the previous speaker, you have 3 minutes in which to make your remarks. And then again, if anybody wants to ask you a question, that will be the opportunity for them. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. On behalf of the applicant and my client, Davison's Homes, I'm speaking in support of the application. Davison's is a family-owned, medium-sized house builder who are located locally in South Northants in Blitsworth and pride itself at making places that people want to live in. We're grateful for having worked with officers over the past 18 months, and the application before you is as a result of detailed discussions prior to submission of the application, and this is now reflected in a master plan and the proposed scheme that officers are now satisfied with. The proposal is for up to 76 market and affordable homes, and this includes public open space, which will provide a children's play area, amenity green space, and natural green space to achieve a 10% net gain in biodiversity. Davison's proposed to build out the site, which provides certainty in terms of the design of the scheme, and the development will assist the council in helping towards it meeting its housing land supply requirements. We're also grateful for having the opportunity to engage with the parish council and the local community through a public exhibition of plans held in the village hall back in 2019, and Davison's are willing to continue this dialogue should outline permission be granted. We also note from your officer's report that the application has received no technical objections from consultees and is considered acceptable on grounds of highways, drainage, landscape, visual, heritage and archaeology. The proposal seeks to deliver 38 affordable homes, which will comprise a mix of sizes and tenures, and the local community, through a public exhibition, particularly identified a need for affordable homes in the village, and this development will provide a once-in-a-generation opportunity, in particular for young people who wish to stay in the village. The development also provides bungalows, which will provide an opportunity to downside, and there are a range of affordable tenures, including social rent, shared ownership, and low-cost market housing. The proposed homes are walking distance from the village school and the doctor's surgery, both of which have existing capacity. Section 106 contributions are proposed towards improvements to local education, healthcare, and the bus service. Additional traffic calming measures have also been offered up, including chicanes and a zebra crossing to slow traffic movements and improve highway safety. I respectfully request that members resolve to grant planning permission subject to prior completion of a Section 106 agreement and agree the planning conditions. Thank you for listening to me, and I would be happy to receive any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Would any member wish to ask a question of him? I see nobody rushing so to do. So in that case, Mr. Love, thank you very much indeed for coming to our meeting this afternoon. As with the previous speaker, if you'd like to close your visual and audio link.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chairman, could we ask the speakers to leave now and follow it on the live stream?
Yes, indeed. If both speakers, Ms. Docking and Mr. Love, you both leave, and this is being live streamed on YouTube, so you can follow our discussions as we get into them. Okay, well, we now go to the ward member. That's Councillor Charles Manners, who has submitted a statement for me to read at the meeting. And he says as follows: I am pleased that the planning officers are recommending refusal of this application, which is overwhelmingly supported by Greens Norton Parish Council and local residents. In short, the proposed development is outside the village confines. The infrastructure in Greens Norton, i.e. doctor and school, are near capacity. The visual impact of the previous development would not, in my view, be helped by this development. And for the developer to suggest 95% of the increased traffic will not come through the village, I do not believe would stand up to any scrutiny, with the school, pub, shop and health centre all in the village. In addition, if one was commuting north to work, the obvious route is to avoid the McDonald's roundabout and go through the village. I trust that the planning committee will refuse this application. That's the statement from the local ward member, Councillor Charles Manners. So we now go to discuss this particular application, and who would like to start us off our discussion this afternoon, please? I see nobody wish. Councillor Hollowell, I thought I could rely upon you. Good, go ahead.
Chairman, thank you very much. First of all, yes, it is a good report, but there are a couple of things, a couple of points I would like to make. Let me start off though by saying that this quite clearly, the proposal is outside the village confine, which puts it in conflict with the development plan, which is an up-to-date plan, and so the tilting balance doesn't come into play at all on this. So I think that's the first and the most important reason for refusal. The second point is in a way part of a question, because I don't quite follow the argument. This is concerned on page 42, paragraph 9.66, where there is a discussion on policy SS2 concerning the best and most versatile land. So we're talking about the agricultural value of the land here. Now, my understanding from the report is that approximately 3/4 of the land is best and most versatile, and so not suitable for development. The quarter is not, it's 3B and could be developed. But because of that, because of where the 3B is located within the field, you can't get to it without causing destruction and damage to the best and most versatile land, which, according to my logic, is that the site is just not suitable on those grounds. So I wonder really whether we shouldn't be citing that as a ground for refusal. And the third final point, so I'll let the officers come back on that in a second. If committee are minded to accept the recommendation, I've just got a small suggestion for condition 1, just a small alteration to make one of the sentences a little bit more readable, but we'll come to that if we get to that point. That's all I wanted to say, Chairman, but I would like officers' opinion on the agricultural value.
Well, certainly I shall invite Samuel Dix to comment straight away on that one. Mr. Dix?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a great deal I can add to what's in the report. I think we acknowledge it is a departure. So, you know, we're not saying that it meets with the policy, but I think we're saying that the conflict is not so great that it's a clear-cut reason for refusal. Having said that, obviously the reason I showed you the map is because that is a matter of judgment, and if members wish to reach a contrary view, I don't think we would regard that as unreasonable. Put it that way. I mean, just to read the actual policy to you, it's very simple. It just says so development will be approved where it does not result in the loss of the best and most versatile agricultural lands or valued soils. So it's a very straightforward policy. There's not a lot of nuance to it. It's really just in this situation, as you've said, the small area in the middle kind of disrupts the overall quality. But I wouldn't wish to steer the committee in any other particular way.
Councillor Hollowell, come back on that.
Yeah, I just to say that I might later after the discussion make a proposal then on that basis.
Understood. All right, we'll park that for a moment then. Anyone else like to contribute to our discussion this afternoon? Councillor Townsend. If we could hear you. Yes. Go.
Yeah. There's a couple of points. As I listened to the applicant, I mean, it just was all so familiar that exactly the same stuff is trotted out each time, that we're going to bring the benefits by bringing 70, 80, 90 houses to our villages. But absolutely no acknowledgement that we have a 5-year land supply. I mean, presumably these applications are costing a great deal of money, which may be right for our coffers, but it just rather depressing that we hear the same thing trotted out each time, but every time a developer comes along, and they don't seem to, well, they obviously think they're going to try their luck at an appeal. I hope, just hope they don't make it, and it must cost a lot of money. But I don't know whether your officers can't make it clearer to them that there's, at this point in time, there's absolutely no point in going against what is very, very clear policy. So there was that. The other thing, which I actually, as I read reading the report, is it was sort of inventing lots of nice new ideas. And it's really 10 years since we approved that the previous application in the lane there. And actually, the thing about the hard edge, what was there before was behind that one, because behind that particular application was rather different, and we thought this would be an improvement, what was put on. So the officers say now the hard edge is a bad thing. I'm not certain that the hard edge isn't, providing the houses themselves are quite well designed. But I think it'd be interesting just to have the comments of this sort of new thinking on that. This is just my sort of random thoughts.
Well, yes, one could describe it that way. Perhaps a considered comment on your general observations. I don't know whether Jim Newton, you want to come in on this as the senior planning official.
Yeah, quite happy to. Thank you, Chairman. But the first point about applicants knowing that the local plan is new and up to date, we know that, the applicants know that. We can't stop them from putting an application in, and if they do, then we have to deal with it, which is why we're here today. I think we all go into this with our eyes open. I think councillors' eyes are very wide open from the comments that I've heard so far about what's going on in this case. So I, from my point of view, I don't necessarily see it as a problem that applicants are making planning applications, because, well, we can't stop them anyway. As far as the hard edge versus soft edge of a settlement goes, I think it is fair to say that over the last decade or so, then thinking has moved a little bit from saying, well, we'll round off a settlement, which was how it always was for quite a while, to more where we're saying, well, actually, we want there to be a clear, like a gentle distinction between within a settlement and outside a settlement. So as you leave a village, then the density gradually gets lower and lower, and we call it feathering out in design terms. So that's just how we look at things these days. If I can talk a little bit about the best and most versatile agricultural land, if I can say it, from my point of view, the reason that we weren't saying that we thought it was a reason for refusal on its own was, as Mr. Dix has already described, my personal view as well, with the experience from elsewhere, is because it's not such a very large site, then if it came down to it, then it's unlikely to be the deciding factor in an appeal. However, I think in this case, it is a clear-cut decision. It's outside the limits. We've got an up-to-date development plan. We're claiming a 5-year supply, and I think I wouldn't be upset if that were to be included as a reason for refusal. Is what I'm trying to get at, really, to give councillors a bit of flexibility there.
All right. Well, we'll await to see whether that does become an additional one. But I've got 2 councillors wanting to speak. In fact, 3, I see. Councillor Johns, I caught your eye first.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, in respect to Councillor Townsend's comments, I'm not sure I can add anything new or insightful, but I would certainly agree with Councillor Hollowell regarding including the agricultural land aspect in one of the reasons for refusal. I think we're becoming increasingly sensitive to the need for more agricultural land, and any loss, I think, is well, I don't think we should have any loss really. In terms of the visual appearance from outside the village, I think the previous application did provide a hard edge. I mean, it is a view I look out on my daily walk every day, and although it has softened in recent years with presumably trees and bushes growing up, I think if this application were to be approved, because of the falling land towards Towcester, I can't see it being an improvement, and it would probably more unlikely be a distraction. I think the only other point I would want to make is this concern that's been raised by the parish council and others about the road network in and around Greens Norton. 76 more properties are a fairly large increase overall in the size of the village, and the road network in and through Greens Norton is far from good. And again, we have our 5-year land supply. I mean, we have taken a big hit in our towns, Brackley and Towcester, with the express view of taking the bulk of development. And the whole point was to try to preserve and ease the development pressures on our villages. And therefore, I fully support the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Bignell.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I want to speak in support of Councillor Hollowell, because the one thing that has disturbed me about this application is the quality of the land they're building on. I know Greens Norton quite well, and I do walk around there, and I've been on those footpaths and walked that land. And it is really excellent land, and I appreciate what Jim says, he wouldn't want that, but I think we should include a paragraph that says you can't get at it because you're going across really nice agricultural land, and it really galls me. And again, I support Councillor Johns. We should, if you're going to build on something, the nicest land is not where you start, and this really is nice land there. And I would like to see, and I'm sure Councillor Hollowell is very good at writing these bits and pieces, I'm sure he could put something in there as a further argument against this proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, he may be writing it as we speak, but I have Councillor Surgeson Brooke who'd like to speak next in our debate.
I would just agree about the agricultural land. The policy says you should not build on the good land, and some of it is good land. Therefore, you should not build on it. So I'm just supporting that if it comes as a recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bignell, if you'd like to remove your yellow hand from the screen, otherwise I might call upon you again, which I may at some point. But who else would like to say?
On the screen?
Sorry?
Not on my screen.
Oh, it is on mine, but there we are. I can see. Anyone else like to? Yeah, Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. I must compliment the officer on a very comprehensive report. Once again, we're in the situation where, we're actually contravening our local plan part 2, and particularly in the basis of when you think we have adequate land supplies, which have been identified and approved, we're in the situation now where also we're outside the village confines. And we're in a situation where we've had similar applications, and I think we have to be in the situation of being in continuity with regards to what our decisions are in the past. I know that, we must actually investigate every single application, but with regard to this, I would certainly support our officer with regards to refusing this application.
Thank you very much. Well, we've had quite a few members speaking. Anybody else like to say any more? I'll let somebody come in the second time if they want to. Councillor Surgeson Brooke, your hand is vaguely up in the air. Do you want to say some more?
Only that I don't know how to get it off.
Well, get your hand off or turn the microphone. You did turn the microphone was off actually when you. It's on now. But if you.
No.
Well, you're off now. You're off now. So there you go. Excellent. Right. Well, I don't see anybody else wanting to say anything. So we have the recommendation before us, which is to refuse permission. I'll just go back to you, Councillor Hollowell, because you reserve the right to insert an additional reason for refusal. Have you written something down which you might like to say now?
Naturally.
Well, indeed. Tell us what it is then.
Can I just for Samuel's benefit, before I make a formal resolution, reason number 1 on page 45, 4th line. Yeah. Really, all that needs to say is to focus new development within settlement boundaries. It saves you using the word settlement 3 times in one sentence.
Yeah, completely appreciate that.
It's only a suggestion. Yeah, okay. All right, Chairman, can I make a formal resolution then? I move that the application be refused on grounds 1 and 2 in the report, plus number 3, simply because it is in conflict with policy SS2 1 brackets H of the local plan part 2, in that it would result in the effective loss of best and most versatile agricultural land.
Thank you very much. Well, you're proposing that. Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Bignell has seconded. So, as is customary, we will now take a vote on this, and Leslie Farrell will take us through it, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So we're voting for refusal of this application with the added reason for refusal as just stated by Councillor Hollowell. So we'll start with Councillor Bignell. Are you for or against refusal?
For.
Councillor Budden?
For.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Dallin?
For.
Councillor Hollowell?
For.
Councillor Johns?
For.
Councillor Pritchard?
For.
Councillor Surgeson-Brooke?
For.
Councillor Townsend?
For.
Councillor Elaine Wiltshire?
For.
And Councillor Paul Wiltshire?
For.
That is unanimous then, thank you, Chairman. That application's been refused.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cooper, do you want to say something?
Just that my name wasn't called.
Oh, well, it must. Well, do you want to call it?
I do apologise,
No,
Councillor Cooper.
Absolutely fine. Just for the record, just so that everything's straight. And I am for.
Lovely, thank you.
Indeed.
I do apologise. Thank
no
you.
worries. No worries.
I think that's good. Well, anyway, we all know where we are. Thank you very much. Okay, well, we'll move on now to item 7 on our agenda, and this is the Appeals Progress Report. And I'll be calling upon now Paul Seckington, Senior Manager of Development Management, to take us through this weighty tome. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. As usual, the Appeals Report lists a number of things. Firstly, it lists the number of new planning appeals received, of which there has been a number since I last reported this, which I think was in December's committee. You'll note that we've had 2 public inquiries come in, one for the development in Paulsbury for 26 dwellings that was refused by committee a short while ago, and also one for one of the Middleton Cheney sites that was also refused by committee.
Could you speak slightly louder? The microphone is slightly.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better. So we
Okay.
can all. And I was going to suggest that perhaps we pause at certain points as we go through if any member wants to ask you anything or say something on any particular appeal. So go on. Thank you.
Yeah, so 2 inquiries have come in following 2 refusals by committee for residential developments, a bit like the Greens and Norton one that was outside of the confines. We've also got an informal hearing for a site at Hartwell that also got turned down by planning committee for another site outside the village for housing. There's also a number of written reps appeals for small scale development across the district. And we've had a new enforcement appeal come in as well. At 3.3 onwards also list the appeals still in progress that we've had in but not yet had a decision on. and you'll see there that the other Middleton Cheney site that had already come in is now going to be a conjoined inquiry with that Middleton Cheney one I just mentioned. So we're going to have the two sites that are actually the other side of the road from one another. We're going to have a conjoined inquiry because they're very similar points that we raised. And
Chair,
that's
can
on the
I just
16th of
ask
March.
could Paul just repeat that last bit again? So I
Yeah,
couldn't quite get catch it.
No, it's fading again, aren't you? Your microphone, not your either your mouth's moved, your microphone has. Can you speak a bit louder? So
I'll try.
Repeat what you said.
I will repeat what I've said. So the two Middleton Cheney appeals, the one on Fenford Road and Waters Lane, are basically the other side of the road from each other, are happening in a conjoined inquiry. So the two will be discussed at the same time, and that's on the 16th of March.
Okay. All right. Continue.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen now to then go through all the appeal decisions that we've had. So bear with me. I'll get this to work.
Nothing yet.
No, I'm trying to choose the right screen. That's fine.
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
Can you see a screen that says appeal decision summary?
Yes.
Yes. Good. That's the right one. All right. The first appeal I'm going to talk about is the outline application for 300 dwellings that was an inquiry in last year. That appeal was dismissed. It followed a refusal by the planning committee. There we go. So this was for 300 houses on the edge of Northampton, on the edge of Grange Park. It lay outside the NRDA area and was 300 houses, including a site for a school. The only road access was via the road to Coulty Hall and Quinton down here. There's no vehicular access through to the existing parts of Grange Park. It was separated from Grange Park by Alamein Wood, and there was a bit of a walk to get to the services in Grange Park. Now, the main focus of the inspector's decision fell down whether it was considered to be NRDA area or not, and whether it could be included. And the inspector said that it wouldn't be an RDA related area because it principally fell down on its compliance with policy S4 of the Joint Core Strategy, which is a very important point. So policy S4 in the Joint Core Strategy is about the Northampton related development area. And it says Northampton's needs, both housing and employment, will be met primarily within Northampton's existing urban area and sustainable urban extensions, and within at the NRDA area, and that additional development to meet Northampton's needs, this is the important bit, will be supported only if it meets the vision, objectives and policies of this plan. So in order to be considered as NRDA related development, even though it's beyond the NRDA area, it has to meet the visions, objectives of the Joint Core Strategy as a whole. And the inspector went to great lengths in the report to demonstrate that it didn't meet those core objectives because of its poor connectivity to the existing facilities in Grange Park, given the distance they would have to walk to get to them, the lack of good public transport links, and the lack of connectivity and the lack of sense of neighbourhoodness. It went through all the objectives and all the vision and quite clearly concluded that it wouldn't meet it. So it was quite a good decision and very clear clarity on what we can and can't consider to be NRDA development.
All right, shall we just pause and get, because some people might want to comment on that one. We certainly had quite an interesting discussion, I recall. Does any member want to say something? I can't see you on screen, but just speak if you want to.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
John, go first.
Yeah, okay, Councillor.
No, we also say, yeah. I mean, does this? I mean, it sounds like, I haven't read the appeal, but it sounds really quite a good good report. And does it therefore knock on the head forever the sort of the Rotherthorpe argument which seems to have been picked up by developers. And how does that? What position does that put us in for all these other appeals coming through from developers?
Yeah, Paul, can't you? Yeah, that's an interesting point. Can you just comment on that?
In terms of the Rothersthorpe decision, he doesn't expressly accept the conclusion because he finds that we have a 5-year housing land supply, but he didn't really go into detail in that because the that position was accepted by the appellant at the appeal. There wasn't a great debate of whether there was a 5-year supply or not, or debate on what the Rothersthorpe decision made, because that wasn't up for grabs in terms of the appeal.
So it doesn't really take us any further in one sense.
Not to that length of detail, but very similar conclusions were reached. The reason why the Rothersthorpe one was actually refused was because of its distance from Northampton and the lack of sustainability of Rothersthorpe to home for new developments. So this Grange Park one is similar in a way, in the sense that he said it wasn't, wasn't connected, it was sustainable, it wasn't the right place to be Northampton related development for all those reasons. It's a very good detailed decision and lists why it doesn't comply with the overarching policies and conclusions.
Councillor Townsend, do you want to say a bit more?
I mean, it's quite obvious that we are being attacked, put in words, by developers who, one and all, seem to want to put in applications and then follow it through on appeal, which must be, it can't go back, it must cost them a lot of money, but it certainly seems to it's put a lot of pressure on us. And one hopes that this will strengthen our position, and that we should be in a robust way to defend it, and hopefully therefore then reduce the amount of needless applications that we're getting at this moment.
Well, that may be wishful thinking, and as to whether we get fewer applications. Councillor Hollowell.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. A couple of points. I listened into the inquiry. I just gripping old stuff. Probably I should get out more. I don't know, but I was interested in two things. One was from a planning policy point of view. They were relying on S4, which basically is setting up the Northampton development area. But it's that part of the policy which says that it would make Northampton say will be supported only if it meets the vision, objectives, and policies of the plan. And so, just for once, you couldn't just sorry. For once, you couldn't just rely on the policy itself. You had to turn back to the beginning of the core strategy to look at the list of objectives. So it's not just the policies; it's the supporting text. I find that interesting. I think the disappointing thing was the lack of support that we got from Kier WSP, Northamptonshire Highways. I mean, this was clearly an unsustainable location from a transport point of view, and yet they failed to make any objection. Had it not have been for the ward member, for the division member, Councillor Clark, who spoke with authority and clearly and concisely and factually, that we would have been in a far worse position. But it should never have been down to an elected member to have done really what professional officers from county should have done. And they did send somebody along. Goodness knows why she was there. She didn't say anything until somebody, I think it was during the session on a 106 agreement, or provisional 106 agreement, and she was asked a question, and I think it woke her up, and that was all. And I thought, really, for an application like this, which was so important, I thought the Transport Authority let us down very badly, and thank goodness we had a divisional member there who was willing to speak out. That's all I have to say, Chair. Thanks.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Is there anybody else want to talk on this particular appeal? As I say, the screen doesn't allow me to see everybody now.
If I could just
yes,
say a few
go
words,
ahead.
Chairman.
Sorry. Yeah, Councillor Johns.
Yes, I mean, some of us, when this came before us, were quite exercised about it. I mean, plainly, I mean, this on our screen now. I mean, it illustrates everything. I mean, the lack of connectivity with Grange Park created this sort of island with poor transport links. I just couldn't see the merits in it. I mean, if there were links into Grange Park, the arguments would have been much weaker in opposition to it. But the lack of connectivity and the abysmal transport links made this an unsustainable application, in my view. And I think the lessons are for those councillors that will exist on the future planning committee with the new council. They must take account of all the information they're given, and where they feel it important to do so, must go against officers' advice if necessary, whether that's to approve or to refuse. But I think that we should learn lessons from this appeal.
Thank you very much. Okay, Paul, do you want to proceed with the next one?
I think Ken Pritchard would like to.
All right, well, the thing is, if I could have the full screen back, I can then see people. Could you revert that, Paul? Then I can, makes it easier for me to see who wants to say something. Yeah, okay, right, that's better. Now I can see Councillor Pritchard, who's smiling and waving. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards, perhaps just a bit of information. The inspector obviously has enlisted some of the reasons why, in fact, the refusal should actually be endorsed. But is there anything, perhaps, the developers can come back now and say, okay, we will actually abide by some of these. Is there a possibility that that could happen, or is this application dead and buried? Perhaps Paul, perhaps Jim could answer that.
Well, yes, perhaps he can, Jim. Say, have your microphone is muted.
Of course, my microphone's muted. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to suggest that was probably one for me to respond to. That I suppose, in principle, the reason that we give clear reasons for refusal of a planning application is so that they're clear and concise, and it's an applicant is able to address them. And the same would apply for the reasons that an appeal is dismissed. However, if we have a site there where the inspector has said, well, in principle, this site doesn't fly, then the principle would only change if there's either a change in local plan policy or if there's some other significant change. So I think from my point of view, looking at the inspector's reasoning and their conclusions, I would be surprised if that was to be reversed anytime soon. So of course, you know me, I'm never going to say that it will never be reversed.
Well, you can't in planning, can you?
Well, no, indeed, no. So I think it's a good position that we're in at the moment as regards defending our appeals and refusing schemes like this.
I suppose that if the applicant was so minded, it presumably could go to judicial review.
Well, not really, no, because the judicial review isn't it's not set up to consider whether the decision that was reached by the appeal inspector was right or not.
Yeah.
And there is a time limit for legal challenge, and there is an eye-watering cost associated with pursuing a legal challenge. So generally speaking, I wouldn't expect to see developers seeking a legal challenge to an appeal dismissal. That's not to say they don't happen, but they are rare.
Can I just add something, Jim, to that? People don't have an automatic right to a JR. You have to apply for it to the High Court. So there's an initial process, initial hearing, and you can only apply if the inspector has misinformed himself in law. It's got to be on a legal basis, not a simple planning basis. So yeah, and Jim said it costs a lot of money just for that initial application. And so, you know, although these are big operators, they don't get where they are by throwing money away. So it's not as JRs are not as easy as people may think that they are.
No, thank you. And yeah, one last point on that from me that's just occurred to me, that even if a legal challenge was to be successful, all that would happen would be that the Secretary of State, in this case an inspector, would make a decision again, and they could well make the same decision again. So legal challenge is very, very unlikely to be the way to go on this.
Thank you very much indeed, Jim. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Surgeon-Brooke, do you want to say something? No, you don't want to say something. Sorry, I'm put off by, looks like your hand. I think it's the back of your chair, actually. It looks like your hand. Anyway, sorry to compare the two. All right, well, I think we can press on to the next one then, Paul Seckington.
There we go. Right, the next one is 16 High Street Road, which is the former Roadhouse Hotel. Permission was sought for detached double garage and with storage above. It was refused under delegated powers and the appeal was dismissed. So this is the red line site area for the Roadhouse Hotel. What they want to do is put a garage towards the rear of the site. If I go back to the other one, so it's in this corner here. This is how the garage would have looked. Steep pitch roof, double garage doors at the front. And we refused the application for 3 reasons. Firstly, the adverse impact on number 18A High Street, which was this property here. So the garage is going here, and this is the sort of frontage outlook. So this is the bungalow here. So the garage is going in this location, right about where those 2 cars are. So this area here. Different cars there, but still the same site. So it's here. And this is an aerial that shows that bungalow that would look out. It would be right in front of their property. We said it would have an adverse impact on that property by reason of the excessive height and its use, the outlook and enjoyment of that property. That we questioned the need for it because the applicant had stated during the application submission that it was needed for the hotel, but it actually sold the hotel at that point, and also the harm to the conservation area. The inspector, in dismissing the appeal, agreed that it would have a harmful impact on 18A, and it would result in an odd development, having a standalone garage in this otherwise open area that would have a different character to the properties surrounding it. So the appeal was dismissed and upheld our reasoning for making that decision.
Right, anybody got a view on that or no?
I can't see any hands on my screen.
Well, you can. Yes, you've got a better screen than I have. Good, well, let's go on to 82 Winston Crescent, Brackley then.
Yes, let's move on. Right, 82 Winston Crescent, Brackley. It was a single dwelling attached to the side of an existing dwelling. Again, refused under delegated powers, and again, the appeal was dismissed. Now, you might recognise this because you have seen it before. So this is the property in question. It's this on here, 82 Winston Crescent. Anybody who's been down to the football club in Brackley will know this street, because this is Winston Churchill Way, I think it's called, that leads to Brackley Town Football Club. Just notice this bit of grass verge, which is sort of a character of the housing estate down here, and that's the football club there. Now what I'm showing you is 3 different plans. This first one is an application that was refused under delegated powers, which showed a 2-storey dwelling attached to the end, which is the red line, set back from the front. They then proposed a 2-storey dwelling which was flush with the front, slightly bigger garden area. This one was dismissed appeal, and this latest application was narrower. So one didn't go as close to the verge or the edge of the path. So that was one of the reasons the last application was turned down, because the loss of the openness of that verge. So they tried to reduce that impact and have it flush front and back and narrow its look. And elevationally, this is the first one that was just refused by us. This one was refused by us but dismissed at appeal. And there's that loss of openness as well as the incongruous design. And this is the latest one that's been refused by us and dismissed again. The impact on the verge wasn't as significant. That wasn't the biggest factor on this refusal and the dismissal by the inspector, but it was just, it didn't tally with the rest of the terrace. They have, you know, a consistent pattern of doors and windows that are consistent across the whole line, and this would look a bit odd, just having 2 windows and then the door on the side. So they've tried 3 times now and been turned down twice at appeal. So I think it's questionable that the site can take a dwelling.
Do the Brackley members want to say anything on this one?
Phil Bignell with his hand up.
Oh, well, Phil, can you revert to the full screen for a moment, Paul? I can see him. All right, building, Phil Bignell. Yeah.
The bit I want to question is the amenity value of that piece of land, in effect, because clearly they own the land, or they, well, not clearly they own the land, but I presume they own the land. They wouldn't have bothered to put the application in. So that in effect, theoretically, they could build to the path if allowed, in terms of planning permission. But how do you judge the amenity value? I mean, I've got one similar in the village where I live, and I think it's going to look awful building up to the side of the path. How do we judge that?
I think it's each case on its own merits. In this particular estate, they are quite open on the edges and on the corners. The 2-story wide extensions would encroach into that area quite significantly and would impact on that overriding character of openness around and front and to the side of buildings.
That's a good answer, because the one I've got is at the entrance to the road, and it's the first house on the right, and it narrows down the aspect of their whole estate. So, all right, thank you for that.
All right, Councillor Elaine Wiltshire, do you want to say something on this one?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm glad this one was refused, to be honest with you, because as you say, it does put a big impact on the corner by the football club, and would impact on the vision display coming out of the football club as well. The other thing is it is using up green space verge, and to me, the house wouldn't be big enough to live in. For the size of the verge there. And as regards the question of building out to the edge of the boundary, if I wanted to build out, I thought the reason for the building out to the edge of the boundary, you had to leave a metre before the edge of the boundary. So I wouldn't have thought there was enough room to do it. So I really do question whether or not building out to the edge of your boundary on a corner plot like that, can you or can you not? It seems to be very all round the area. Can you give me clarification on it?
Yeah, what's the answer on the meter business, Paul?
Well, again, each case on its own merit. So some places it might be acceptable because it hasn't got this openness character on the estate or road that they live on the street. There is no, you have to set in a meter. That's not written down anywhere. Highways might want you to set it in a meter, so you don't have windows oversailing the highway, for example. Or in terms of visibility space on a corner, it might need to be set in, but there's no policy that says that you have to set in from a meter. Sometimes we have 2-story side extensions in a street, and we ask first floor additions quite often to be set in a meter from the boundary to prevent a terracing effect and make sure that not all the houses are joined up. There is that gap between houses.
Yes, it just didn't seem to be. It would be more sense if there was a sort of a continuity around the area on all the estates, rather than different estates or different parts of the estate. I can understand if there's a lot of green edge, but when you're on a corner plot, it would be a lot better and have a better clarity on it.
So each application on its merit, as Paul has said. All right, anyone else want to say anything on this one? If not, we'll press on. We're going to Nether Hayford. Paul, go to you again.
Yes. Yeah. 5 Parsons Close. This was the conversion of a garage to habitable accommodation plus an additional first floor above it. Again, refusal under delegated powers, and again, appeal dismissed. In terms of its location, this is the green in Neverhaven to the south. This is the Charity Bliss School, is that what it's called there?
Yeah.
Got the the old Sun Inn, I think, somewhere about there.
Yep.
And then to the left is Parsons Close, which is a group of detached houses. This is what the house looks like. What they wanted to do was convert the garage and add a first floor. So that was the garage there, converting that and then adding this first floor. It was refused on 2 grounds, in that due to the orientation or proximity of the application site, where this extension was going to the neighbour that's down here. Here's my laser pointer. So there's a bay window here, and we felt that it would be harmful to that the enjoyment of that room by having such a large 2-storey extension so close to it. And we also considered that by converting the garage and creating an additional bedroom, it would result in a loss of parking. So this is the street view of the property. This is the garage that's to be converted behind the horse box there, and the first floor addition there. And this was the bay window we were concerned about, with an extension going very, very close to the first floor. And you'll see that there's only a couple of spaces really in front of the garage, with the garage going as well. We were concerned about loss of off-street parking. The inspector agreed with us on the impact on that bay window, but didn't agree with us on the parking issue. He considered that on the basis of evidence before him, the proposal would result in the underprovision of off-road parking spaces when assessed against the council standards, and harm to highway safety would not result, however, due to the siting of the door in a quiet cul-de-sac with the road sufficiently wide to accommodate off-street parking, and therefore would not pose a loss of highway safety. So we won one and lost one in terms of this appeal, and understandably there is some off-street parking availability in the street that wouldn't cause harm because it's quite a cul-de-sac location. So I accept in this particular case that was okay.
Councillor Bignell, do you want to say anything on this one?
No.
No, I thought you might. I heard you mumbling, that was all. All right, well, nobody else has an opinion. So, oh yes, you have. Councillor Hollowell has. Right.
Paul, I'm just wondering, looking at the second ground, we started off by saying that it failed to provide adequate off-road parking, and it was not in accordance with the SPD on parking. If we'd have left it there, do you think we might have been more successful? Do you think our problem was that we then waffled on into the area of highway safety, and then we come up against the NPPF that way? Do you think we might have done more by saying less? What do you think?
I see your point. Yeah, that we sort of gave them the foot in the door to come back and question that. I think the inspector would still probably have had that thought process. Well, yeah, it doesn't conflict. So it does conflict, but is there harm being caused to it? And actually, can they park elsewhere acceptably? And he felt that they did. They could. Sorry. So I don't think we shot ourselves in the foot, so to speak. They would have still had to consider that aspect, whether harm's been caused or not in reality.
Okay, all right. Let's press on. Let's go to King Sutton with your next one. Which is 9 Astrop Road.
9 Astrop Road, indeed. Here it is. Right. This was a lawful development certificate, so not an application for planning permission. It was a certificate they were seeking to confirm what they wanted to do didn't need the benefit of planning permission. Which in this case was the conversion of an outbuilding at the end of their garden to a self-contained annex, but which would still be, they say, ancillary to the main dwelling. We refused it, and the appeal was allowed in this case. So this is 9 Astrop Road. and the building in question was right at the very end of the garden. This is the existing plan. So part of it was a workshop, part of it was a garden room, and part of it was a garage store. And they wanted to create a small 1-bedroom annex with a lounge/kitchen on one side and 1 bed with a bath on the other. This is how it currently looks. It's already a bit domesticated. Already has a flue on one side. This is the workshop element side, and this is the garden room side. Now, what we refused on the grounds that we didn't think it was incidental to the use of the dwelling. So there's permitted development rights that say what you can do to your property or garden without the need for planning permission. And one of those things is things in your garden. So that's Class E, where you can erect sheds or make changes to existing sheds, providing it meets certain criteria. And one of the things is that it has to be incidental to the enjoyment of the dwelling house. What we therefore looked at is whether can something that has primary living accommodation and be almost a dwelling in its own self be incidental. And our view, looking at previous decisions and inspector government's guidance on householder developments, felt that it wasn't incidental, and the inspector agreed when he looked at that it couldn't be incidental. Therefore, he looked at whether there was a change to a planning unit, where there was a material change in use, and effectively he considered that because of the location of the outbuilding at the very end of the garden, it would still have to be part and parcel of the same planning unit, because they couldn't access it independently from the main dwelling. You could only really utilise the two together at the same time. And also he placed weight on the appellant's proposed use of the building that would be for members of the family, and that they would also utilise facilities in the main house as a function of how they'd use the property. So he ended up allowing the appeal, as I say, but he did conclude that also if the building was used in a different manner than that put to them, or there was a change in circumstances or any of the factors that he's considered, then the use may no longer be lawful. So it could still change in the future. But based on how the appellant described it, based on the circumstances of the site, he considered it didn't need the benefit of planning permission allowed the appeal.
Any lessons to be drawn, do you think, on that one, Paul, in general?
It was slightly unusual. I wasn't expecting it. I thought we had quite a clear case that it wasn't incidental because it created a self-contained accommodation. But when you have primary living accommodation, such as bedrooms and kitchens, my view is still that it's not incidental. But I sort of took the point what he said. I mean, it could be something that if they'd applied for permission, we probably would have granted it. I don't think there's any harm being caused by it. He just felt that he didn't actually need permission in the first place. And it's not a thing that could be repeated everywhere, because there would be some circumstances on a different site that would lead that you might have a separate access, you can access it independently, it might be a slightly bigger annex. So again, I'm saying for about the third time now, each case on its own merits. Just because it's fine here doesn't mean it's fine elsewhere.
Councillor Surgeson-Brooke.
I have a slightly similar application in my ward at the moment, and I was just checking that Mr. Seckington had seen that the officers knew the result of this appeal, because this is actually a woodshed, but it's a beautiful stone, and it's actually attached to the building. But I think the officers have been rather unhappy about it, but I think they ought to take this into consideration. So I was just checking that he had seen that they had read this appeal.
Well, funnily enough, I'm doing this same presentation to officers, I think it's next week. So they will certainly hear about it if they haven't seen the email that's gone round about it. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, thank you very much. Anyone else on this one? No? All right, Paul, you go to the next one, please, in Wappingham.
This Poplar's Farm, Sarsham Road, Woffingham. Again, this is a lawful development certificate, so but slightly different in this case. This was an application for a wind turbine many years ago that got allowed at appeal. This was near Woffingham, and what the purpose of this application was to prove that they actually implemented it, i.e. the permission is still live. So they hadn't done the wind turbine. They all they'd done is made changes to the access into the farm. And what they tried to say was that was the implementation of the permission. This is the red line application site. So this is where the turbine was going. The red line included access road all the way to the edge of the farmyard, and also included a trencher that they needed to put in as well to a substation. What they did, so this is the point of access. Point of access is actually outside the red line. The red line doesn't start till beyond the farm buildings to the left. But you'll see on the next photo areas of new concrete that they put in around the edge of that. I've just shown you. So it's basically more, they widen the access here along that verge you see ahead and in this location here. Now, we said because that was outside the red line of the application site, that didn't mean that they'd implemented the planning permission, so we turned down the certificate. The inspector made a great deal of looking at all the evidence, and when I had to go through 27 paragraphs to justify the decision they'd reached, and the inspector effectively said that they confirmed that the works to widen the access road through the farmyard were not within the red line. They also confirmed the works were not shown on the approved plans, and also were not shown in the design and access statement. However, we went on to say that the design and access statement referred to a transport and access statement, within which made a comment about increasing the concrete road at the farmyard entrance to the highway. He did agree there was some ambiguity about the works undertaken, but again quoted some extracts, which is this is all in the written summary. He effectively concluded that whilst not within the red line, works to widen them to enable access for the site for normal loads were vital to the development permitted. They were clearly defined within some of the documents with the application, and effectively said they needed to do it. It was part of the general permission that was granted, and although outside the red line was the implementation of the permission, so the farm owner can now still erect that wind turbine at some point in the future. So again, there was this decision and the other one. Whilst we lost, it was clearly quite a detailed, in-depth thing that both inspectors had to look at to justify the decision that they reached, and it was neither one was straightforward.
Indeed. All right. Right. So we got to full screen. Anybody want to have a say on this one? I don't see anybody's that moved by it. Yes. All right. Councillor Hollowell. You're muted still, I'm afraid. Go on. No, you're muted again.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, it's a change over.
Yeah.
I've got an application in the ward at the moment, and it was submitted, and the red line for the application didn't reach as far as the highway. Now, the case officer there, I think it was Ashley, picked it up and asked them to resubmit, because I think it's important when we've got these, we can't really be doing with islands, red line islands in the middle of nowhere. We've always got to know how do they access the highway, and the red line should include the route all the way through to highway land. This is a bit woolly. I don't quite agree with the inspector. I think he's been rather soft, to be truthful, on this one. I think we were right.
Yeah, I would agree that we should always have the red line taken to the point of access to the highway to avoid issues like this. And like the previous one, I was surprised with the inspector's decision. I can see the logic that he actually went through to get there, but I do agree that that element of softness to the decision.
All right. Fine. Paul, you perhaps press on to the enforcement appeal results then.
Yep, here we go. Again, this is one that members might recognise. So previously, there was a retrospective application for 4 roof lights to be installed on a barn in Pottersbury. What I'm showing you first is this image here is what the building looked like before any work was done, and this is what we had approved on the right. And the main thing you want to look at is the front elevation, which is the 2 at the top. So this is what it was, and this is what we approved to be an acceptable conversion of that frontage. What they ended up doing was put 4 roof lights in. So there was none approved before, and they put 4 in. We turned down that retrospective application. There was a planning appeal, and the inspector agreed that it was inappropriate and had a harmful impact on that building, contrary to the policies that we've got and our design guide. And there it is in situ, those 4 roof lights there in that building that was partly converted. What we then did was serve enforcement notice, and the inspector agreed in the enforcement notice that what they'd done was unacceptable, and therefore they do have to remove those roof lights and bring it back to the permission that we had granted. So that was a good result.
Yep.
And I'm glad the 2 inspectors came to the same conclusion.
And
so,
then this one.
Yeah, 11 Furnace Lane, Neverhaven, back to Neverhaven we go. This was the enforcement notice against a fence that had been installed without the benefit of planning permission. So this is the location of the, again, the green again, and this is Furnace Lane. The site in question is 1/2 of a pair of semis on a corner plot. So this is what it used to look like. This is an image from Street View. See a nice hedge all the way around. And what they did was put a 2-metre high fence along part of the frontage here and along the Hillside Road. This is the one on Hillside Road, and this is the one on the main road. And we turned it down on the fact that it would be harmful to the character of the area, having such high fencing along what is a nice frontage to the property. And the inspector agreed that our serving enforcement notice was correct, and agreed that the fence should either be removed or reduced to 1 metre in height, because you can have a fence a metre high in the frontage of the property. They actually quoted the policies that we've got in the local plan and said they were relevant, and also made reference to part of the design guide that makes it clear that high fences, dominant fences along the frontages should be avoided. That was again a good result.
Right. Well, thank you for all that. Yes, thank you. Back to the full screen. Any sort of observations on those 2 from anybody?
It was awful.
That fence is quite prominent, or was?
It was, yeah. It was a good win, that was. I didn't like that fence.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes. Right. Well, on the SIL appeal results, nil, Paul, then. So there's a report there.
Yeah.
We have a conclusion and reasoned recommendation to accept the position statement. So, Leslie, do you want a formal vote on this?
No.
Well, I'm asking Leslie, not
no, we don't need a formal vote. Thank you, Chairman.
Good,
If we could
excellent.
just agree, or if anybody could indicate if they don't agree, that would probably be the better way to go about it.
Right, stick your hand up if you don't agree then. No, nobody has. So I think you can take it we all agree then. Excellent.
Thank you.
Right. Well, that completes item 7. So now we'll move on to item 8, which is urgent business, previously agreed with me as chairman, and there isn't any. So on that basis, I'm checking the time. It's 3:39, and I will call an end to this particular meeting. So whilst we'll lose the YouTube coverage, thank you for watching us. Our next meeting is on Thursday, 4th